Welcome to the ride with Wild Wayne Cartwright, an exciting thrill ride through the wonderful world of HBCU athletics. Before our trip begins, let's set a few ground rules. First, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Second, hit the like button. Third, please be sure to tell someone else about this show. Now that we've got these things out of the way, it's time for our journey to begin. Sit back, relax, and enjoy your ride.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of The Ride with Wild Wayne Cartwright Sunday recap. We had a lot of stuff go on this weekend, and we got a big show for you. And I'm so excited to welcome my guest here in a few minutes. But you know how we do when we get these shows started, y'all. We got to fire it up. And so as we fire it up, I want y'all to make sure that you like the stream. I make sure that you subscribe to this podcast, do all that good stuff, all right? So let's fire it up. First off, the big one that took place down there in Orangeburg, South Carolina on Thursday night. You had South Carolina State race out to a 17-0 lead. And then North Carolina Central, they woke up. Max Uran had a big interception to kind of get North Carolina Central out of their funk. They cut the deficit down to 17-7, which eventually went to 24-7 on what was considered to be a controversial touchdown run by Eric Phoenix, where it looked like his arm the ball might have come loose before he hit the plane of the end zone. They reviewed it. They upheld the call. Central, they got Jamari Taylor loose. He had a long touchdown run. Walker Harris, he had a long touchdown pass. But in the end, it was Eric Phoenix, as he threw for 321, 2 touchdowns. Mr. Caden High was Caden High as usual. 8 catches, 113, 2 touchdowns. Big win for the Bulldogs as they take the outright lead in the MEAC. Plenty of ball to play, y'all. All right, moving on to homecoming there in Jackson yesterday, where UAPB, they kicked a field goal, and then that was it. It was all Tigers all the time. Jacobian Morgan, 187, 3 touchdowns. Mr. Irv Mulligan continues to keep it rolling. This time, 19 rushes, 141 and a tote. Defensively, Makai Hagans stifled all day. Giovanni Gibson, the leader in FCS in receiving yards, could only get 45 on this day. UAPB is an offense, only 206 yards. JSU, big, 41-3. UAPB, they host Alabama A&M next week. And for JSU, they get Valley in Daytona Beach, Florida. Tough one for Grambling. Grambling led this one 21-7 in the third quarter, had things going their way, and then the turnover train started. Del J. Bailey started this game for an injured Miles Crawley. 2 interceptions. A lot of missed opportunities. Cam Ransom came back to the lineup for Bethune-Cookman. After Luke Sprague played the last 2 games, he was solid. A $199 pass and 2 touchdowns. And then Dennis Palmer, who's been a godsend for these Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. 86 yards on the ground and a touchdown. They scored the final 17 points of the game to send Mickey Joseph and his crew to a 24-21 loss. For Bethune-Cookman, they make the trip down to Southern next week. Grambling, it's back to the hole as they welcome Alabama State. In Valley, shout out to Valley. This was a tough one. Valley had the lead in this one, 10-3, going in late in the second half. And then Lamagia McDowell had 2 touchdown runs for the Panthers of Prairie View. And then, in typical Valley fashion, they score a touchdown with 1:47 remaining to cut it to 17-16. All they needed to do was kick the tying extra point. But the snap airmailed the holder. Missed opportunity, missed the onside kick, and there you have it. Prairie View 17-16, Valley 0-9 and 14 in a row in the loss column. Prairie View, they get back home, they welcome FAMU. Valley goes to Jackson State. And, this was a big one there. Howard blows out Delaware State. Delaware State, for a while, they had a string of close losses. They were doing things impressively, but now the last 2 weeks, the wheels have completely fallen off the Hornet train. They had 2 turnovers, 7 penalties, and only 116 yards of offense. Jay Sean Scroggins, 304 yards in the air and 4 touchdowns. And Mr. Robert Jones had 2 interceptions. So Howard, big win for them, staying in the MEAC race. They go and they host South Carolina State next week, and a big opportunity for them. Delaware State, they stay at home and they take on Morgan State. And the game I was at yesterday, Southern. This was a full 60-minute football game. A&M got out 10-0, and then Zay T-Set and the offense woke up. 294 in the air, 3 touchdowns, including the touchdown pass to Dupree Fuller with 1:12 left. Southern comes to the hill and pulls off a much-needed big 25-20 win. We'll talk about this plenty. Southern, they get back home to take on Bethune-Cookman. A&M goes to UAPB. And one of the big games of the day, an overtime thriller there between these 2 teams here, man, with Norfolk State and Morgan State. Morgan State, Badema kicked a 47-yard field goal at the gun to tie it up and send it in overtime. And then Morgan State with Todd Smith, they scored a touchdown to start off in the overtime. And then Morgan State scored a touchdown to match, and they were stopped on a 2-point conversion. Oh, big bad things for Norfolk State and our coach Big Worm. They had a 24-3 lead in the first half. End up losing this one in overtime. Morgan State, their next game after this war of attrition will be against South Carolina State. And then Norfolk State, they'll take on Delaware State after a bye. And then it was homecoming in Tallahassee, where you had FAMU getting off big on Texas Southern. Daniel Richardson, 5 touchdown passes to 5 different receivers. And they outgained Texas Southern 531 to 154, y'all. Oh, Texas Southern. They've impressed us this year, but this one was tough for them. 52-28. FAMU, they stay in the SWAC East race and they go on down to Prairie View. Texas Southern, they look for a 3rd win in a row over Alcorn next week. And then finally here on the rundown, the Port City Classic. Alabama State had literally no offense the whole game. But guess what? Their defense stepped up and did it again. Keon Lewis, 25-yard interception return for a touchdown. And then also Kareem Key, steady, did what he needed to do, 145 yards in the air with a touchdown. Alcorn State, couldn't get it going here. They couldn't cash in their opportunities. They outgained the Hornets 428 to 242, but could only get 17 points on the board. So for the Hornets, big win to stay in the race. And so next week they go down to the hole to take on Grambling. And for Alcorn, it's back to the drawing board against Texas Southern. And that's the rundown, y'all. And I want to welcome in Miss Keisha Kelley. Good evening to you, and thank you for joining the ride. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I love that. I love the way you did that. I really do. I love the rundown. I love the roller coaster in the beginning, but the rundown I love that. I love it.
Hey, we got to do something for the people, and here on the ride, it's the biggest thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to do things for the culture because, as everybody knows, we don't have a lot of really good content out here. And Correct. For me, we can just go ahead on. We can run down the games. We can give all the good things. And so, we here. So what I want to start with, let's start with the game that we both were at yesterday. This big one here with Southern. Now, we knew coming in that both teams were kind of the same, where there was like roller coasters and, no pun intended, but we had changes of quarterbacks. We looked good one week, not so good the next week. But Zay T-Set in this game this was his best performance. So, talk about this game from your perspective, Keisha.
Of course, I always tell people I'm Alabama A&M raised me, so the university made me. Alabama A&M's home, so coming into being able to come home and seeing that this is the first time the Jaguars have been back to Huntsville in 9 years, and
Mm-hmm.
so to be able to see them play and get the win, big game, and like you said, much needed win after we fell to Florida A&M last week 24-6. And so for TSEC, just last week, the issue was, addressing the offensive side of the ball. What are we going to do about offense? Who's going to be the starter? That was definitely the question. Everyone's asking who's going to be the starter. And so, you have a true freshman. You have a freshman there that's starting. And you talk about 294 yards, 3 touchdowns, and in that last, minute or so, it just came down to the wire. And pretty much like you said, both teams are the same. I've seen some great things with Xavier Langford. I won't take anything from him. I've seen some great things with him, mainly during homecoming. Really good game. Not so good last week at Magic City Classic. And I just don't know what I thought was going to happen. The last minute or so of the game yesterday, it could have went anyway. But much like we were talking about on the sideline, you're talking about stretching the field. You just knew the interception was coming. You knew it was coming. And, the touchdown that Southern got, that pretty much was the nail in the coffin. That was just it.
Yeah, and A&M, the way they got out 10-0, they were doing some things on offense, and then then the Southern's defense. This was just a game of runs. It was like Southern would go on a nice little scoring run, and then A&M would find its footing on defense, and then A&M scored a few points, and then then Southern would stop us. But the thing that was so interesting was that when Xavier Langford scored with about 5 minutes remaining in the game to make it 20-19, one of the things that I said when I was standing there, I said, the way that T-Set and these receivers have been in sync all day, I said, I really have a feeling that they're going to get this thing down the field. And, at that point, all they needed was a field goal. And you guys have a real good kicker with Joshua Griffin, who had missed an extra point uncharacteristically in the game, which was surprising. But this was a game that both teams really needed for different reasons. A&M, they needed it because it was an emotional situation with Meldrick being in the hospital, and still praying for him. The coaches, the players were rallying around him. And then also, for Southern, this is a game that they've won, and this win now keeps them squarely in first place in the West. And, this is something that we'll talk about here in a few as we talk about, what some of the clinching scenarios and some of the different scenarios and things that are going on with that. So, but also, you talked to both of these coaches this past week, and this was a thrilling game, and many people watched this game on Thursday night on ESPN2. With South Carolina State getting the win over North Carolina Central. So when you talk to both coaches this week, what did you see from what you got from their interviews in relation to the game itself?
So I always tell people the thing about it's they're two different people. They're the same people, but two different people. I've been friends with them, seemed like forever. Like I followed them forever since, they were both at Southern. And so ironically enough, I interviewed Coach Oliver on Monday, interviewed Coach Berry on Wednesday. And it's so funny because you can hear when Coach Berry talks, he says, his motto is to go 1-0. That's his motto. Go 1-0, win the day, 1-0. And so he was like, Keisha, I demand a lot. Because I was asking about his coaching style. And he says, I demand a lot. Where Coach Oliver says, I'm not that tough. And so looking at that, now we know he's tough, but looking at that whole demeanor, now you can see why we go 1-0 and I demand a lot. You can see how that actually transfers over to his team.
Mm-hmm.
And the crazy thing is everywhere that Coach Berry has been, he's won championships. That's the crazy thing. Everywhere he's gone, he's won championships. So, it's not like it was, and people have predicted, they was like, I think South Carolina State is going to come in. I think South Carolina State is going to come in. And you look at, some of the guys, and I'm not going to lie, I'm a Caden High fan. I ain't going to lie. I'm a Caden High fan. Really great receiver. Really happy that he ended up going to South Carolina State. But undeniably, looking at what Eric Phoenix did, 321 yards, 2 touchdowns, like, it was on both sides, but we can't take anything away from North Carolina Central, because they only lost by 3 points,
right?
But they knocked on the door. They did not give up. They didn't give up. So they were still going. They were still going strong. And that's one of the things, they didn't give in to defeat. A lot of times that's what people do. They'll get down and they'll give in to defeat. But, looking at both coaches, I know that, they're lifelong friends. They coach together and they understand what's on the line. And I think they both are, they're front runners right now for the MEAC.
Yeah. And, this game was so physical at the line of scrimmage. And, one thing you knew that South Carolina State, they were going to come in, they were going to air it out. You saw a lot of 5 wides. You saw, they didn't really run the ball a lot. Well, for one, neither team really could run the ball until Jamari Taylor kind of got loose there in the fourth quarter. It was real tough sledding. And, North Carolina Central, their defense kind of set the tone early, because, that first drive of the game when South Carolina State drove it down there and they tried to run it 3 consecutive times and couldn't get anything, so these two teams, I really hated that, the team that loses this is probably, for all intent, maybe, we'll see, there's a lot of football left, but might be, staying at home instead of going down to the Celebration Bowl. And, I'll pull up here the standings here in the MEAC, and you can see now with South Carolina State, they're up top now at 2-0. And the teams that still have a chance to tell this story, Howard, the defending champion, their next 2 ball games are against both of these 2 teams that are in front of them. So, and then also we know Morgan State can play defense.
Absolutely.
They shut North Carolina Central down, 2 weeks ago. But, North Carolina Central made just enough plays. So there's still some football left here. And that's the basic thing that I want to make mention to people that are watching. Now, I know that people say, oh, well, maybe it's a formality that South Carolina State is going to go head on and win it and head on to Atlanta. But, you still got to play the games that are in front of you. And one thing you know about the MEAC is just like everything else we got going on. You never can tell. So,
right.
So somebody else that's playing well, you talk about Jackson State. This was another game yesterday where they just went out here and they just totally pounded UAPB. Now, I expected that Jackson State was going to win this game. I thought that they would win this game by about 3 scores. I was very surprised to see that UAPB could literally do nothing.
Yeah, I expected at least, I'm not saying at least, I always expect at least a field goal and a touchdown. So I expect at least 10 points. And because even though, Jackson State is playing at a higher advantage, it's still a in-conference team, right? And so I expect at least 10 points. I'm like, at least 10 points because, we saw what Pine Bluff did a couple of weeks ago. And so it's like when, they say we're going in and Coach us said we're going in and when we're prepared to play. But I did not expect 41-3, not 41-3.
Yeah. And, in this game, we knew about Giovanni Gibson. We knew that he's been so impressive the whole year.
Right.
They had bracket coverage on him the entire game. And those 6 catches that he had, those are the toughest 6 catches you could get. They came in with a very well-established game plan. And as far as Mekhi Hagens, 15 of 32, they had him running out of the pocket. Wherever he was running, they had him bracketed. They set the edge. They made it tough on him. And then on the offense, Jacobian Morgan just continues to just do what he needs to do. But the key to Jackson State, as I always tell everybody, they are the best team in the SWAC, hands down, when they take care of the football.
Correct. As long as they don't turn it over, I agree. As long as there are no turnovers, and we can go back to this, even with the situation when they played Grambling. Grambling straight out, you talk about 20-something point win, but all of those mistakes came at them turning over the football, and Grambling capitalized off of every last one of those turnovers. They scored on every last one of them.
Yep. And then Irv Mulligan is still the man, churning towards he's got a real good chance now to hit that 1,000-yard mark. In fact, he'll probably get that 1,000-yard mark. And he's been brilliant the last 3 games. I just think that if Jackson State is going to play like this, it's going to be tough to beat them. I know those last 2 games, we'll talk about it here in a bit, but it's going to be tough to beat them if they play like this. I feel bad for Valley next week. Feel bad for Valley next week. Oh, man. Now, let's talk about a team that you love, that being the Southern Jag, I know you probably felt a little something about this one. Now, Grambling. Mickey Joseph, he had a lot to say this week. Got fined $5,000. And, I agree with you, Coach. The officiating has been suspect. Yesterday when I saw YN Myers walk on the field as a referee at our game, I was like, oh, Lord. But this game, though, they had this game in control, 21-7 third quarter. And then all of a sudden, the turnover bug bites them. So with a game like this, and being down there in Louisiana, and I know some of Grambling folks, you can turn your head if you want to, because it's okay. Because I felt like that last year when we lost to Bethune down there. But just knowing Grambling and knowing the folks like you do, I know that Dooley has been ridiculed for good reason. And then, Crawley is hurt. But what do you think these guys need to do during these last few weeks ahead of the off season to get this thing turned around?
And I'll be honest, of course it is a rival, but, in all honesty, of course, like you said, we told people about Dooley. Prairie View told people about Dooley. Everybody told people about Dooley, right? They're just trying to make Dooley be somebody that he's not. Nice person, but as it's coming down to coaching. It's simple mistakes. This is simple fundamentals, and it's strictly coaching. And so going into the off season, this is when you have to start making changes. And nobody wants to fire a coach. Nobody wants to demote anybody. Nobody wants to move around. But the grumblings have started, and I can't necessarily pinpoint like what coach. But of course, Dooley's going to be he's getting the brunt of the grumblings from Grambling. And so I was looking at something yesterday. I think Trey might have said something like 2 points on a game came down to 2 points here. A game came down to 3 points here. Again, all of their losses have come between 2 and 3 points.
Yep.
Is what their losses have come into. And so what you're looking at is this is not what we know to be Grambling football, just to be honest. It's not what we know, Grambling to do. And so when you start taking the losses and it's inconsistent, it's back to back to back. Yeah, so let's look at it. Let's look at it. So
here it is.
If you look at, the Jackson State game didn't count. So that don't mean nothing. You 2 points with the five overtimes to Prairie View.
Yep.
2 points to Alcorn. 10 points to Arkansas Pine Bluff. Arkansas Pine Bluff won. Or lost, rather. Let's see.
Yeah, Texas Southern, they lost by 7, and then yesterday losing by 3. Yep.
So you have that 2-3-7 gap, mostly 2 to 3 points is what they're losing by. That's just coaching. That's coaching there. That's coaching. That's turning the ball over. It's just not consistent. Yeah.
And, for them, this is just one of these things that they're going to look at. They're going to look back at, and they're going to say that this was some missed opportunities because The game against Prairie View, they had chances to execute, and they didn't. The Alcorn game, they struggled to get their offense going. Still even had it down there at the end. If they get a defensive stop, that they can win that game. Texas Southern, that went either way. And then yesterday, like I said, they led 21-7 in the third quarter. So, for Grambling, I know everybody's giving them flack and, a lot of laughter, and I know that they said like order would be restored, but I tell you this though, to your point, a few breaks, this is a different story for this team, so, but I want to talk about this next team here. We'll talk about Alcorn's game. We'll get to it. There it is right here. Let's talk about Alcorn's game there yesterday, Port City Classic. Now, this game, if you're an Alcorn fan, and shout out to Unc, Elvin Crisp. I saw his video last night. I felt your pain, man. Look at the yardage gained. And if you look at that 428 to 242.
When you were giving the rundown, I kept looking at that. And I'm like, there's no way that's a mistake. There's no way he made a mistake on putting that up there.
Mm-hmm.
And you only put up 17 points.
Mm-hmm.
You only put up 7, and then you lost with them 17 points.
Exactly. And you gave them 7 on a touchdown interception. Yep. Now in this game, Xavier Vaughn, he played, and then Trey Lawrence came in, and this came down to a Hail Mary at the end, where shout out to my boy Mo Carter. He had the call down there. They got the ball all the way down to the 5-yard line, and they caught the pass, but couldn't advance it any further. But this game, as I watched it, I caught the tail end. I caught the fourth quarter of this. It was like Alabama State was just content to say, you know what? We got the lead. We'll punt the ball back to you. We don't care if you stop us while we run. We'll punt the ball back to you. And they did. Yeah, you're right, Peasy. Yeah, 4 yards short. Yep. And then, like he said, this game was all about coaching.
That's it, and that's it. All about coaching. And that's what we're finding in so many of these games, especially in the SWAC.
Mm-hmm.
It's either bad coaching, not enough coaching. It's just some bad play calling. It's some bad play calling.
Yeah. Yeah. And Alcorn, if they don't, and I'll pull their schedule up, and some of the things that they're going to kick themselves over, they definitely going to kick themselves at that Southern game. Now, that Southern game, they could not stop the run.
Absolutely not.
Southern ran that ball 50 times for 295. In the game yesterday, that's another one that's going to stick out to them, if they don't get this done, because now they're in a really, really dire situation with that second loss, and also not even having a tiebreaker. But, 3 games left. We'll see what happens. But now one more we'll talk about here is this game that took place down there at Homecoming in FAMU. Now, there were some folks that were saying, Texas Southern, that they were a sneaky team. They could possibly make this closer. Daniel Richardson and these guys, they put this game away quick. This was 28-zip. Quick.
And so, and I'm surprised they didn't put up 28 points from Texas Southern. But, I always say with FAMU, they always find a way to close the game. Now, 52 points is more than just close the game, but they always find a way to win the game. So it's no surprise with them. I'm not really sure why people thought that they would do anything to beat FAMU. I'm not really sure why they thought they would beat FAMU. But like you said, 28-0, and that the game was over before it even started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can see big. 531 to 164. Now we knew that Texas Southern couldn't throw the ball really all year. You look at Wilson, only threw for 53. Those were 2 short touchdown passes. They were a running team, and basically, when I was doing some of my predictions during the week in scouting this game, I said that FAMU would win this big because I felt like they could make them one-dimensional, and if you make them one-dimensional and they have to run, Even though FAMU had been struggling against the run, if all you had to key in was the run, it made it simpler and it showed up. And Richardson, 5 touchdowns to 5 different receivers. So, FAMU is still in the race, but they've got to get some help here. And so let's talk a little bit now about the clinching scenarios. Well, first, let's pull up the standings, and then we'll talk about the clinching scenarios. Let's not put the cart in front of the horse.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about the East. Here's the East, all right? This boils down very simply. Jackson State, you still got the division in your control. The biggest thing that they need to do from this point right now, assuming if Alabama State wins their game on Saturday in the hole, what Jackson State just needs to do is win against Valley and then go to Montgomery and beat Alabama State, and you will win the East. That's assuming if Alabama State wins against Grambling. If you're FAMU, you're still in the position where you need Jackson State to lose twice. Of course, one thing that the SWAC office doesn't want to see is that there is a potential for a 3-way tiebreaker. and what I mean by that is that there could be a situation where Jackson State, Alabama State, and FAMU all finish at 7-1 in league play, and they all would go 5-1 inside the division, with each team beating each other, and then each team would go 3-0 against the West. And then that would send the tiebreaker down all the way to point G on the tiebreaker scenario. Now, if that gets to that, trust me, y'all, I will explain it. But for the sake of tonight, let's just keep it simple. Jackson State, they have this thing on their racket. They take care of their business, keep winning, they'll be hosting the SWAC championship game. Okay? Alabama State, they have a very good chance if they can keep winning. Now, we'll switch it over here to the West. As you can see, things have changed in Southern's favor big time now. Because with Alcorn losing, now you have a 2-game lead in the division. Basically, it's dire straits now for everybody in the division. This is Southern's thing to lose. Now I'll pull up this one. So here's the current clinching scenarios. For Southern, they can clinch the West as early as this Saturday. If they beat Bethune-Cookman and Alcorn loses to Texas Southern, congratulations, Southern. You'll have, with 2 weeks remaining, you will be in the SWAC championship game. Or if they win their next 2 ball games, now they get Bethune-Cookman and Pine Bluff at home the next 2 weeks. And that's how Southern can win the West. All right. So in other words, you take care of your business, you'll be just fine. Now, Alcorn, it's a real tough road for them. Basically, they got to finish 1 game higher than Southern. So in the current configuration, they need Southern to get them not just 1 time of help. They need them to lose 2 more times, and they need to navigate a difficult schedule themselves.
Mm-hmm. Because they still got to play Jackson State.
Yeah. Here's Alcorn right here. Now, Texas Southern has beaten them 2 years in a row.
Mm.
You remember last year, the Sunday Massacre in Houston.
Yes. So now here we are again.
Mm-hmm.
Ready for another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then they got to go to Prairie View, which is no walk in the park. And then Jackson State at the end, like you said. So it ain't looking very solid. Mm-hmm. And then here's you guys. You guys got it done yesterday. Now you got 2 home games. If you win these 2 home games, at the very least, you got it.
Right.
So that's just where it sits now in the West. Okay. And then, like I said, we just have to continue to just watch this whole thing transpire in the East.
Yeah.
As I said before, Jackson State, you beat Valley and Alabama State, you good. You can go to the Alcorn game, just playing for Soul Bowl bragging rights if you want to.
Yep.
Definitely. And Alabama State's best chance, you need FAMU to lose once and you win out. Because if FAMU loses once, that gets rid of that three-way tie possibility. Then it becomes, can Alabama State win a home game November 16th against Jackson State, which could give them a tiebreaker. Now, we know that there's still a whole lot of game left. And if we look at Alabama State's schedule, that game in the hole, I'm going to tell everybody, every Alabama State fan right now, in the hole, you better not take it for granted. Just because Grambling is playing the way they playing, don't think they're not going to show up Saturday pissed off and ready to knock you down.
That's true. That's true.
And I like what you said here. Grambling they're going to have some pride at home now, especially after that. And he says, we not losing to no fifth string.
Oh, no. Oh, yep.
So, this is what it looked like for Alabama State, because, you just gotta take care of your business. And then if you're in the case of FAMU, like I said before, FAMU, their schedules, this week against Prairie View, have some attention.
And I think what happened was, the loss to Jackson State it deflated them. It's just like it just deflated them. They're still playing good football, don't get me wrong, but that loss was like a blow, because now they go head to head arguing back and forth, and now it's become, now you're in third. I told people all season long that Alabama State was gonna make some noise, and then nobody want to listen to me.
You did. I
ain't gonna do nothing. But one of the other things that people have to realize is the strength of the schedule. You gotta look at where the games fall on the schedule too.
Yep.
You get the tougher teams at the end of the schedule, you in a bad place. Like we got FAMU last week. That's towards the end of the schedule. And I don't know if people rather play people in the beginning or the end. I'd rather get them out the way than play them in the end, because when you show them what's going to happen towards the end and all the different scenarios, anything can happen. And everybody going into the game trying to win, everybody hungry, everybody going in for bragging rights. Everybody's trying to stop the next team. Like I said, Grambling ain't got nothing to lose, but they going to play us like it's the end of time at Bayou Classic, because they don't want us to win. They want to be able to say, oh, we lost. It's just the way it is. Same thing with Alcorn and Jackson State. It's just the way it is.
Yep. And then, here again for Jackson State, it basically for you guys, you got a 2-game season. Just look at it like that. You got a 2-game season. You take care of your business the next 2 weeks. There it is. And you'll be the host, because their overall record is going to be better than anybody that comes out the West.
Right.
That's just what it is. But so let's move in. These are my ride tokens for this week, and just so everybody knows, for those folks that are just watching, for you to get a ride token, your team has to win. There's been a lot of guys that do some really wonderful things, but they didn't play on a winning team. Because it took Giovanni Gibson, it took him 4 weeks to get on this list, because they finally got a win when he had a big performance. But my ride tokens this week, I got 2 quarterbacks on offense. So I give 2 offense, 1 defense, and then I give a special teamer. Daniel Richardson, 5 touchdown passes, in a big win. That was very impressive for him. And then Ja'Shawn Scroggins, quarterback of Howard, 304, 4 touchdown passes. Those are my quarterbacks that make it for offense. Now, Irv Mulligan, he was on this list 2 weeks in a row. You know, he could have been on here for a third time in a row. But I said throwing for 5 touchdowns and 4 touchdowns in big wins that your teams needed to have to stay in the race, you get on this list. Robert Jones, the third from Howard, 2 interceptions, is the defensive person this week. And then Mr. Sar Badima of Morgan State, he kicked a game-tying 47-yard field goal to send that game against Norfolk State to overtime, keeping his team in the game. So those are my ride tokens for this week. What do you think about these guys, Keisha?
You know, I want to go over to SAR because we talked about, and I want to touch on Morgan State's defense.
Mm-hmm.
Every year, I don't care who they put, they give somebody a fit, and you can almost say that they are like the trap team, but at the same time, they have a good defense every year, it seems. And so, what Coach Wilson? Was that Coach Wilson?
Mm-hmm.
That's over there. What I think he's going to do with that team over the course of time is only going to get better. But I absolutely agree. I can't take anything from it, especially with Daniel Richardson. I totally agree. I like this ride tokens. This is very creative. This is very creative over here. But yeah, I do. I agree. I do. Yeah, I agree.
All right. And now let's turn our focus to next week. All right. So week 11 in the SWAC, we've got my boys hitting the road, going to take on Pine Bluff. Pine Bluff, we'll see how motivated they are after their loss yesterday. That'll be on SWAC Digital Network. And mind you, all these games start at 3 Eastern, 2 Central. So you're going to have to use your remote this week and use ESPN Plus and YouTube and all that stuff, right? All right, big one down there for Alabama State, going down there to the hole to take on Grambling. And then you have Valley, shout out to Valley, on HBCU Go, going down there to the vet to take on Jackson State. Expect Charlie Neal and all them to get into their filler material early. And then, big one for you guys down on the bluff. You got Bethune-Cookman. Again, that's on SWAC Digital Network. Then you've got Texas Southern going to Alcorn. And then you have FAMU hitting the road to make that long trip over there to Prairie View. All right, so talk about these games, Keisha. What do you see for these games next week? Pick any ones. Talk about it. You got the wheel.
Okay, so I'm gonna start. We're gonna go through them. I'm gonna start over here at Alabama A&M. I want to say this is a must-win for Coach Maynard's Bulldogs. This is a must-win, but at the same time, Pine Bluff is going to be looking to coming into the win column after that 41-3 loss to Jackson State. So again, that is a big week. It is. It's hard to take losses back to back to back. Some of the teams, it just happens, but other teams, you don't expect that to happen back to back to back like that. But I do believe the Bulldogs will go down and they will pull that one off. Interesting game, probably one of the top games. Alabama State at Grambling is going to be a good one. Even though Alabama State, Coach Robinson's guys sit at number 2 in the East, Mickey Joseph is going to be looking for some revenge over there. He's going to be looking for some revenge after the loss to Bethune-Cookman. And so I think the guys are going to be routed up in the hole. Like you said, their actual, I won't say score, their schedule or what they have, their loss column really does not determine, the way that they play. I think that this week they will have a different week. Again, I think everybody will be amped up and ready to go, especially playing back at home. Jackson State, undeniable. I mean, they're going to beat Valley. We're just going to call it what it is. We just know they're going to do that. Bethune-Cookman and Southern coming onto the bluff. If T-Set has another game like he had yesterday, we'll definitely be able to go ahead and seal the deal. Because this season, Bethune-Cookman, a lot of people thought Bethune-Cookman was going to do a lot more than what they did, and they did not. So I think the Jaguars go ahead and take the W here. Another interesting game, Texas Southern and Alcorn. Um, this is. Are they playing at Alcorn? Or are they playing at Texas Southern?
It's at Alcorn.
Okay, so that's on you going down to the reservation, and so it's a lot different when you go down to the reservation. You talked about a team sneaking in to get one. I think Alcorn is the out for redemption, so I think the Braves will take this one here. FAMU and Prairie View. This will be an interesting one. Like I always say, FAMU finds a way to win games. Coach Cozy will go down, and I think it's going to be a close one. But I think FAMU is going to walk away with the win here.
Yeah, it's really interesting with this slate of games because you're seeing some teams, especially the crossover games this week. Mm-hmm. It's been a minute since Alabama State has been down there to the hole, and then also Florida A&M. This is the first time that they're going over there to play Prairie View over there as a conference game. Now,
mm-hmm.
You know, they played Prairie View twice last year in Tallahassee, but this is different. So the game that the two games that definitely do have my attention though is the one in the hole for sure, given the stakes for Alabama State, because Alabama State, you know, if you get this game, you get Jackson State in your house the following week. Now, I know a lot of people, they say you can say all you want and y'all can have it. Y'all can say that, oh, Jackson State's unbeatable. You think nobody's going to beat them. You know what? If that's how you feel, that is definitely your right, because they've been playing the best ball. But one thing I can say is that if Jackson State doesn't execute and doesn't take care of his business, anything can happen. Same thing with Alabama State going down there. They've been playing with fire now these last couple weeks. So this is one that they got to execute. And then for you guys, this is just about keeping your head on the bigger prize ahead. I know all the people down there in Baton Rouge, you know, people going to be tapping you on the back all week, telling you how great you are. Yeah, we making our plans to go to the SCG on December 7th. But, you know, you got to pump the brakes and just say, hey, you know what? One game at a time.
And that's the conversation I had with a guy. You know, he's talking about, you know, we'll get Bethune-Cookman and we'll get Pine Bluff. And I said, yeah, but you got to look at it one game at a time. And I said, you already know Grambling gonna be playing us crazy, even though they don't have nothing to play for. I said, we already know. I said, but at the end of the day, you cannot overlook any team. You cannot, because you look up in the scores like 0-21. You can't. Now you're playing from behind. You can't overlook any team, and that's any team that's playing. You just can't.
Yeah. Now I'll say this. He said, "Who said we were unbeatable?" I'm just saying that there are some of your fans that are around.
It's gonna be some fishy stuff.
Yeah, he said it's gonna be some fishy stuff.
So it's gonna be some fishy stuff going on in Montgomery.
Hey. You know, some of the things here, you just gotta take care of business. You know.
Wait a minute. When do they play? When does Jackson State play for Alabama State?
Yeah, right here next week. Yep, next week.
Oh, the 16th.
16th.
Well, I think I got to open it on my schedule. I might need to head down to Montgomery.
Because I tell you, if Alabama State does win this game, that'll be for Jackson State to clinch the East, and that'll be for Alabama State to have a chance to clinch the East. Now, they still would need to, you know, play Prairie View the very next week. So that wouldn't be a clinching scenario for Alabama State, but it would pretty much put them in the position to have a chance. So that's where that resides. So interesting games next week, and then just two on the MEAC slate. But that game where you got Morgan State, they're going to take on Delaware State. Delaware State at this point, the way they're playing defense, they might be headed for the off season. And then don't sleep on that game there at Howard, because one thing we've seen, when you come off winning a big game, And then you got to turn around, hit the road the next week. And just like I said, people tapping you on your shoulder, telling you how good you are. Everybody saw it. South Carolina State don't fumble the bag at Howard because, as we showed you in the rundown, the boys put up some points yesterday. So what do you think? What do you think about South Carolina State and Howard?
I think it's going to be a great matchup. You like you say, you know, you got two dominant teams, but I do think South Carolina State. I still think it might be a close one, but I think South Carolina State will walk away with this one. Even with the way, and you know what surprises me, I thought Delaware State was going to do a lot better this season. I truly did, because well, before they got into, I guess, conference play, they were actually like towards the top, maybe like 2 or 3, like 3. But Morgan State, I think, I think they'll walk away with the win here with their defense. I think defense will keep them alive.
Yeah. So those are some of the action that's happening in Week 11. And so, yeah, we talked a little bit about the standings. So I'll just bring it back up one more time. So, we can start with the MEAC real quick. MEAC, like I said, South Carolina State, they've now jumped to the top of the division. Howard still has their say because Howard is going to play them next week. And they also still have to play North Carolina Central. So anything can happen, y'all. Now let's pop back to the West. And here's the updated West standings for everybody again. As you can see, Southern is in control. They just take care of their business. If they win this week over Bethune-Cookman and Alcorn loses to Texas Southern, it is all over. If for some reason, Alcorn, I don't want to say if for some reason, if Alcorn does win, then it'll be pushed into next week. But basically, if Southern wins its next 2 games, it doesn't matter what Alcorn does. They will be headed to the SWAC championship game. And then last but not least, here's the East. As we said before, Jackson State has it in their control. Win the next 2 games, you will be staying at home December 7th with a chance to get to Atlanta. Alabama State, you win this week, you get Jackson State in your house on the 16th with a chance to shake some stuff up. FAMU, you need 2 Jackson State losses. And if Jackson State loses and you and Alabama State both went out, then you will be headed to the SWAC championship game because you hold the tiebreaker over Alabama State from that head-to-head win there in Montgomery. And so this thing can ebb and flow as we go on. And I know a lot of my Alabama A&M folks because we talked yesterday. Yes, the same thing I said last week. It's still the same thing I'm saying this week for anybody that wants to ask me any questions about our current head coach. That is a situation that we are leaving in the hands of the powers that be. And until then, we got some games that we just going to play out in the stream. So, do what you got to do. So, I want to close tonight with this with you, Miss Keisha Kelley. So given the current state of the SWAC, right? Just want to talk about the SWAC real quick. What do you think just overall with SWAC football as a whole? You can talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever you want to talk about according to Keisha Kelley.
So I really do. I believe that the SWAC it's become a very competitive, more competitive over the years, right? I think it's a very competitive conference, and nobody talks about HBCU sports without talking about the SWAC. They'll talk about us, they'll hate on us, they'll compare us, they'll be arguing with us. They do it all, but nobody will have a story without talking about somebody in the SWAC. Nobody is covering HBCU sports without talking about the SWAC. And it's almost like we're the elite conference, like we're separate. And I would say, well, we're all still in the same thing. But I really do. I applaud Dr. McClellan for all the stuff that he's done in the conference. Mm-hmm. You talk about more contracts. You talk about ESPN, HBCU Go. It is so many things that we didn't see, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that we see that the SWAC is doing now. And for us to be able to log on, like, you know, I ain't gonna say you may not want to see the game that's on HBCU Go, whatever the game is, but at least you have an option to see a game. It's a game on there. So if you don't have ESPN Plus or you don't want to pay for it or whatever, you have the option to see a HBCU game. You also have the SWAC Digital Network. And so it's so many things you talk about, you know, coming to Atlanta. You also have the basketball tournament that's going to be here in Atlanta. You have the baseball tournaments that's here in Atlanta. You have MEAC SWAC Challenge. You have Celebration Bowl. I love it because I'm in Atlanta. It means the only thing I do is just get in the car and drive up the street and come back to the house. So, you know, I think that the SWAC has become more and more dominant. And what we've seen, what I tell people all the time is I remember when, you know, people were like, oh yeah, Jackson State's cocky. I remember when Jackson State was 3-8, 2-9. I remember when Jackson State was, they were the doormat. They really were. And they went through a host of bad coaches, a host of bad times. And I remember that. So now that you win, and of course you're going to have that, hey, you know, we doing it. And you have every right because you went through so many bad times. And even with a bad Jackson State team, they still packed the house. You still had the numbers to reflect. These people are, they was just loyal to the team, bad or not. They were still traveling to the games, playing. So I think, you know, when you get a team or a conference where you had the originals and then you bring in FAMU and Bethune-Cookman, it just adds more hype. More hype to the conference. And so you get a mix of everything. You get a mix of different teams where you don't know what's happening, what's going to happen. You get different coaches. And I always be like, oh God, can we just get Valley? I want Valley to win at least one game, just one game. I want Valley to win at least one game. Every year I'd be like, at least one game. But, you know, I want everybody to be able to compete in the conference, every single thing. And the crazy thing is I keep thinking back to SWAC Media Day, when they said Southern was predicted to go fourth. And here we are. You can call us sorry. You can call us whatever you want to. We're first in the West. And then right now, you know, we're solely holding it down. And so we never know what's going to happen on any team, any school until the game is played. You never know. So I think it's been the wild, wild west. It has definitely been wild. Every week it's been something different. This week is going to be something else different. I can't even tell you. I'll say, oh yeah, we should win or they should win. And then we all get out there and then something else happened. And you're like, well, what happens? And so I think that, like I said, it's been really physical. It's been really dominant. Again, I told people Alabama State would do something different this year.
Yes,
Nobody want to listen to me. And so now we're looking at Alabama State sitting at number 2. On the other side, for A&M, the young man yesterday, and this is totally up, I think the young man, was he carted off yesterday?
Yes. Is
he okay?
He is.
Okay. Because I know the young man was carted off last week at Magic City Classic. And that's tough. That's tough to see. Because we know these guys out there playing, they're giving it their all. And it's tough to see those guys go down, especially in front of, you know, teammates, family members. And it's tough to watch your child go down like that. So, but I really think that is, you know, it has just become just lack of better words, it's just a dominant, we're just a better conference overall, because things are just, when you get more than one team, when you get multiple teams competing, you got a Jackson State, you got a FAMU, when you get multiple teams that's competing in the conference, it just looks better versus just one team dominating. You get multiple teams competing in the conference, it just looks better. And we can talk about how the MEAC, you know, when the MEAC was, people don't want to talk about it, but we can be honest. A&T wasn't letting nobody come out the MEAC.
No.
A&T was holding the MEAC hostage. Nobody else was going to go to the Celebration Bowl. North Carolina Central got in there, twice? But A&T wasn't letting nobody go nowhere. They wouldn't let nobody come out of that conference going to the MEAC, but going to the Celebration Bowl with them. And so I think with them only having 6 teams, somebody needs to share some teams with them.
This is what Mr. Jackson said, and He said
Yeah.
if MEAC would get their stuff together and get more teams. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Having only 6 teams, man, it just. I
Yeah.
mean,
Like 6 teams, and you really can't lose nothing. You can't do anything with that. You really got to win all the games.
Yep.
It ain't
Yep.
like this is like a non-conference. Every game is a conference game because you literally have to just fill. And if you looked at their schedules, they had to have so many fillers in the beginning before they even got into MEAC play because they only got 6 teams. And I'm just like, that's too much. I don't.
Yeah,
That's,
seven non-conference games
see,
to accommodate, and then you play your five conference games. Yeah. So, but I think with the current state of the SWAC, I know that this was coming down the pike. Their scholarship limits are raising in FBS football. They're going to raise from 85 scholarships up to 105 scholarships. And the deficit between FCS, which is at 63 scholarships, that deficit of 22 scholarships right now is going to grow to 42 scholarships because the scholarship limit is not going to increase on the FCS level. And sometimes, everybody, when we start getting into talking about, playing games on the field, one of the things that we can't lose sight of is the business side of the game.
correct.
Because the monies with NIL and then also the lawsuit that is the lawsuit settlement that the NCAA is working to try to settle with member schools in the FBS, that'll be $22 million that each of these schools are going to get for a good period of time to pay people. And so that, and lastly, I'll say this with the last trend. With the NFL draft last year, I'll just say NFL draft. I'm not even going to talk about any other sports. But with the NFL draft, out of the 257 guys that got drafted last year, only 31 of them were Group of 5 or FCS or D2 or D3. Only 31 of those guys were non-Power 5 school guys. And so the trends now is that you see a lot of players, if they have any kind of success on any level, that's in FCS or whatever, they're looking to get out of there and get higher. But what you're seeing now is even the Group of 5 isn't even necessarily constituting to guys getting drafted now. So that's why you're seeing so many of these teams that were playing Group of 5 that are moving up to get into the power conferences. But eventually, as everybody, everything has a residual effect. Everything that you overspend for, it has to come due at some point. And so as fans and as supporters and as alums of FCS programs like ours in the SWAC and in the MEAC, it is very, very vital that the fan support does not lack. And also, when I'm talking about fan support, I'm not talking about just being present in the blogs, not being present on these shows like mine, platforms like yours, all of the great people who are out here doing all of our content. It's important that you back it up financially, because one thing you're not going to see, the NCAA is not trying to give FCS schools any additional monies. What they're trying to do is they're just trying to use the FCS as a means of what kind of television revenue can we get out of y'all. That's why you see they ping pong and move around the rights with the FCS playoffs. They move the championship game to Sunday one year, move it to Saturday, then move it to Sunday, move it to Saturday. And then also you see things like the Celebration Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not get it twisted. The Celebration Bowl is a business transaction for ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
Because they own the Celebration Bowl, just like a lot of the other bowls that they own. So the important thing is that with the situation at hand, everybody, I do 10 minutes. There's other people who are out here that are doing different things where we're showing you different trends in scenarios and situations. So the important thing moving forward is that you do your best to educate yourself on the business of sports. Because a lot of these transactions that take place, these things fly over your heads, but there are people like me, there are people like you. There's a lot of people who've been telling you these things about where it's going to. Pay attention. That's all I'm going to say is pay attention. But as far as SWAC football, as far as MEAC football, we're coming down the home stretch.
Getting close. We don't know like you said, anything can happen at this point. Anybody, and everybody's excited about who's going to clinch and who's going to do what. But then you have to face it. Reality. It's like, okay, well, now you got to go play a team that you didn't beat or a team that you lost to, depending on who it, just depending on how it comes out. So, it is. And you think, well, if it ends up being your school, what do you do different from the first time?
Correct.
If you're playing a Jackson State, if you're going up against, let's say, Alabama State, it's okay. Well, how do we put together another perfect plan? So how do we execute to make sure we win? And the thing is when you start talking about SWAC championship, you don't want to just win. No. You want to at least win by 2 touchdowns or so. You want to win and dominate, because then you're looking at, okay, now I'm going to Celebration Bowl. I'm playing the best out of the MEAC. Now I got to go over here and win against them too.
Yeah, and mind you, you don't have a week off.
Correct.
Because the Celebration Bowl is the exact next week.
Right.
After the SWAC Championship. SWAC Championship is December 7th, Celebration Bowl December 14th.
So good luck. I always thank the Celebration Bowl for giving me that. That's my birthday present, because my birthday is the 15th. So they thought so much of me. They just had a game in honor of me the day before. They thought so much of me. They had a game the weekend of my birthday.
Well, I'm gonna be at the Celebration Bowl this time, and we're gonna look to get it. We're gonna look to chop it up some more, and we got more work to do together. It was good to meet you in person yesterday, and we got more work to do. So everybody, you saw the schedules of everything that's happening next week. If you're going to be out there at the games, hey, cheer loudly for your teams. We know that we coming down the stretch. And so with all that, I'd like to thank you, Keisha Kelley, for joining me tonight on the ride.
Thank you so kindly for having me. And thank you, Bulldogs. Y'all took care of me yesterday. I appreciate the banter, the laughter. I got some food. It was a good time. It was a turnaround trip, but it was definitely a good time on the hill.
Yeah, and everybody, make sure you like the stream. And also, man, hit that subscribe button, man, because we got some big things that's coming. So I'd like to thank y'all for tuning in. And, yes, I will be back next week. I'm going to hit the road in the morning and head back home to Ohio. So God bless y'all. We'll see y'all next time.
Thank you for joining us on the ride with Wild Wayne Cartwright. As you exit the ride, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel, hit the like button, and catch up on all of our prior episodes. Until next time, God bless.